Empire.
Hello and welcome to my podcast. Do me a favor, subscribe to the John Keim Report wherever you get your podcasts. If you're watching on YouTube, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. You can find us there as part of Empire Media, AMPIRE. Always much appreciated when you tune in. Don't forget, you can read my work on ESPN.com. In a minute, I'll be joined by ESPN Chicago Bears reporter Courtney Cronin as we take a look at Sunday's game. Talk a lot about Caleb Williams, and we talk a lot about Caleb Williams and Jayden Daniels. Did the Bears fans have a little bit of angst early on when Jayden Daniels was doing pretty well and Caleb Williams was still kind of coming along? What's been the change in Williams' game? Well, we get into all that, and then just some thoughts on the Bears' defense and where could the Commanders attack, where are some weak points. And it's a big game for both, regardless of Jayden Daniels, if Jayden Daniels plays or not. And that's the story you can read on ESPN.com. And just a brief update here for those who didn't read or didn't hear, Jayden Daniels did not practice on Wednesday. Still obviously with the rib injury, and really no other update, but I will say that we'll know more on Thursday if he practices at all. And then Friday, even if he's just limited on Friday, that would be a positive sign. Now, whether or not it's a good sign, it's a positive sign. And we'll get more information at that time. That's when Dan Quinn will talk to us next. It would be Friday. So we'll get the game status and know whether there's a chance or not. And, we'll go from there. So hard to even speculate what might happen because I don't know. And we'll just have to find out. I think there's probably a good chance that he is at least limited Friday, but I don't know what that means for Sunday, and that's what matters. So we did talk to Marcus Mariota today. I talk about this for the club members. I talk a lot about what Marcus said and, et cetera. But just in a nutshell, it's good to have that guy around just for a situation like this to also help kind of provide some advice to Jayden Daniels. I don't know if he needs it, but he can do it. And also to be an experienced backup to come in and play. So anyways, there you go. Now, again, here's my conversation with ESPN Bears reporter Courtney Cronin. By the way, I will be back on Saturday with my 5 things I think about this game. I did talk to Dante Fowler about some of his plays on Sunday. I think you'll enjoy hearing about what he had to say and just why the Bears run game might be more suited to this defense stopping them because of what they did last week. So you can hear about that on Saturday. Anyway, here we go. Here's Courtney Cronin.
Hey, it's Bram Weinstein here, voice of the Commanders, and of course, frequent guest of this podcast, the John Keim Report. I wanted to let you all know that my show, which airs at 11 a.m. to 12 p.m. on ESPN 630, is now exclusively produced by Empire Media, my company, and is going to be distributed through our network. So I'm asking you, please, if you subscribe to this show and love this show, give mine a try as well. Subscribe to the Bram Weinstein Show wherever you get your podcasts. And many of the shows and many of the elements that are in the show will be available on the Empire Media YouTube channel. We're going to talk a ton of Commanders and other DC sports. Check it out.
Courtney, as we record this, we don't know yet if it's going to be the true Jayden-Caleb matchup, but we know that Caleb Williams is going to play at least. So curious, what in general, what's been your early impressions of his start for the Bears?
Well, I think you have to look at it in categories. So the first 3 weeks when the offense was a mess, when we weren't sure who was effectively in charge. I mean, you hear about these meetings that were happening, the leadership council going to Shane Waldron saying, coach us harder, simplify things. All of the direction that this team lacked seemed to kind of get nipped in the bud early on. So where the game that Caleb Williams throws 93 yards in his NFL debut feels so far removed from the games where the Bears are putting up 35 points in back-to-back outings against the Carolina Panthers and the Jacksonville Jaguars. And I know some people will look at Caleb's first 6 games in a vacuum and say, he played some really bad defenses along the way, but the growth that you're seeing on a week-to-week basis, there's not many categories where he isn't making a statistical jump from week 4 to week 5 to week 6 and working through those early season lumps to get on the right track, to get this offense its identity. They finally found it. It took 6 weeks, which I guess is better than taking 9, 10, 11 weeks before they get to division play. But these are games right now where a 4-2 Bears team has to be feeling pretty good about where they're at, considering the early part of their schedule and easing Caleb Williams into NFL play. It really couldn't have lined up better than it has through the first 6 weeks. And now coming out of the bye, which I know people think a week 7 bye is early, but I promise you, for this team that started training camp on July 20th and had 4 preseason games in there, it came at the right time. And they're ready to go. Like, this is a good opportunity, another measuring stick sort of game. Young quarterback taking number 1 overall, young quarterback taking number 2 overall. Hopefully we get to see that matchup to see how they truly do stack up, albeit they're in different offenses.
And where is, because watching, I was able to watch some of his games, the last couple games, and he looked pretty good. So what's the biggest area of growth for him in recent weeks?
It started with the run game, like taking the pressure off of Caleb. Like, I remember looking at my stat book when I was walking to the press conference week 3 in Indianapolis. I'm like, holy moly, he threw 51 pass attempts. Wow. Like, he dropped back to throw 51 times. That is not sustainable. And I know Caleb said, I'll do whatever I have to do to win games. At that point, DeAndre Swift, their very expensive running back that they brought in this offseason, was averaging 1.8 yards per carry. They knew that wasn't going to be any recipe for success. So by getting the run game going, giving the young quarterback some run support, opened things up to where all that talent that they brought in, from Keenan Allen to Gerald Everett to Rome Odunze, could start getting utilized. And on top of that, you have DJ Moore, Cole Kmet, who have been, 1A, 1B security blanket for Caleb Williams. He's spreading the ball around. That is by design. That is exactly what they wanted him to do. And there's been a bigger emphasis on it the last couple of weeks, to where that's why you're seeing his yards per attempt go up. The touchdown to interception ratio over the first 3 games, very different from the last 3 games. And watching in real time the progression a rookie quarterback's making, they're asking him to do a lot of different things, John. Like, it's pretty remarkable. There's some cool cut-ups that you'll see Caleb in slow motion, going from his first read to his second read to his third read to his fourth read. And if something's not there, then going back to, back in before he decides whether he's going to take off and run and scramble or not. Like, those are pretty advanced things for a rookie quarterback to be doing. So to see him struggle with some of that stuff early on because things weren't right elsewhere, and to watch him get back on track. Yes, it was against some not so great defenses, but he did it nonetheless. And he did it by throwing 4 touchdowns against the Jacksonville Jaguars. We know that the bar's low for rookie quarterbacks, for all quarterback play in Chicago. He's, in 6 weeks, raising it to a level that we, in my lifetime, have never seen for a young QB here.
Yeah. I think we can both say the same things, but it is funny because, like, yes, those are bad defenses, but what would you like? I know fans will point that out sometimes. Like, would you rather see the opposite happen?
Exactly. Exactly. And the operation's clean. Like, that's something I thought is so, it's so critical. We don't talk about this enough with young quarterbacks. Like, they're not under center at the college level. Like, they're going to get the play from the sideline. Like, that takes time to adjust to make sure that you're not getting a delay of game because you couldn't get the play call off, or you don't have everybody lined up where they need to be. The operation has been clean operations, leading to him getting the ball out faster than he did the first couple of weeks. And by all intents and purposes, that's allowing them to run a more efficient offense. And, a pretty heavy injection of no huddle, hurry up, going tempo. Caleb's been really good at operating that. I know that can be something that if your quarterback can't do that, if you guys can't get to the line of scrimmage and just go because of all the things that are, that go into being able to run that effectively, you're not going to be a very good offense. That's when they've been at their best, which, I think has really helped them be able to attack defenses as they're starting to get into a rhythm.
Washington does this. That's why I kind of laugh, because they're doing the same thing with Jayden Daniels here. And the funny thing is, like, both these franchises searched for a long time for this guy, and they both seem to have found them, and both teams seem to be in a really good spot. But how much angst was there early from Bears fans? Because Jayden Daniels gets off to a little bit hotter start than what Caleb did, and was getting a lot of praise for it. Was there, and I guess, like I said, Caleb is doing really well. the last,
Yeah.
but how much angst was there early?
Oh, there was some. You can't deny it. And some of it kind of comes from like different groups of people. There are the people who are just the negative Bears fans who believe that being a fan of this team, you could just can't have nice things because it can all seem like it's going the right way in the offseason, only to be met with disappointment. Then there are the people who saw Justin Fields getting off to a 4-2 start with the Pittsburgh Steelers and saying, see, that's why they shouldn't have traded him and they should have traded the pick and gotten the haul. And then there's the people who looked at it and said, well, what's Shane Waldron doing? Why can't he seem to figure out the right personnel usage? Why is Gerald Everett? I know I mentioned him earlier. He's just a name that, you bring up when you think about offseason acquisitions. Like, this guy was being targeted more than Cole Kmet, who's their $50 million tight end, who is a core part of this offense. Like, there just weren't a lot of things that were lining up correctly. But I don't think that rational Bears fans were looking at this saying, Caleb's a bust. This is the worst investment. You shouldn't have drafted him #1 overall. You should have drafted Jayden Daniels. But of course, you're going to have a wandering eye to a degree to be like, oh, what's going on over there? The natural question is, why is Jayden Daniels having so much success early on when we have seen and heard, oh, Washington has similar offensive line issues to the Chicago Bears. Oh, they have a new offensive coordinator bringing in a new offense, just like the Chicago Bears. And if the more you pare it down, you realize that both quarterbacks are being asked to do different things within these offenses. But with time, I mean, the biggest lesson that people have learned through the first 6 weeks of the season is that you don't make a declaration on who a player is, a rookie, no less, after 2 games, 3 games. And even now, like, we've seen a 6-game sample size. He looks like he's on the right track. Is this going to last? Let's see. But it's because the expectations were so astronomically high, and it's not just the generational talent that a lot of these #1 overall picks get labeled with. It's the fact that the Bears have never had a good quarterback in our lifetimes, in your lifetime, in everybody's lifetime. I mean, I didn't watch Sid Luckman play. I wasn't born yet. Neither were you. So it's
Despite what some think.
It's because, like, we have this belief that Chicago can never get the quarterback position right. So when they finally get the person who's supposed to be the savior and it doesn't start out on a heater, that's tough to stomach. But I thought Ryan Poles said something really cognizant, something we should all be cognizant of, especially Caleb Williams, when I asked him about how do you size up your quarterback versus what's going on with others, notably Jayden Daniels in Washington. And he said, naturally, you want your guy to hit the ground running, but you understand that there's going to be there's growing pains. There's a learning curve. And he wants Caleb to, quote, run his own race, which I think is the right approach you have to take with it, because it's naturally you're going to be frustrated when you don't do well. And I don't think Caleb dealt with some of the early season stuff. Like, he wasn't happy with what was going on, but took the onus upon himself in a lot of different ways, whether that was, remember the whole bossy quote from DJ Moore when he's like, he's getting bossier in practices. That's not a bad thing. That's, hey, let me show you how I want my route run, or how I want you to run your route, because this is what I'm looking for when I'm about to release the ball. It's taking ownership as a young player, as a 22-year-old, something that takes quarterbacks a lot of time to find the way that they're going to lead an offense. And for Caleb to do that, realizing it wasn't working with a 1-2 start to get on track, I think speaks volumes of where he's at, not just in like the on-field X's and O's progression, but like the leadership progression too.
The fun thing, Courtney, is that this could be a matchup to watch for the next decade. If the league is lucky or whatever, and these guys both do hit, this could be one to watch for the next decade. And that's what I think could be. That's why I hope Jayden Daniels plays, so that we get to see the first part of that. Yeah. I know they're not in the same division, but it's still one that we could, we're going to be talking about Rookie of the Year honors for them. It could be MVP stuff down the line, playoff games. There's a lot that could happen down the road if they both.
What this reminds me of, like this crop of quarterbacks, and yeah, we don't know what Michael Penix is because we haven't seen him played. Bo Nix has played; it's been up and down. JJ McCarthy's hurt. But there were 6 taken in the first round. I think I'm forgetting Drake May. Yeah, there's 6 taken in the first round. We kind of lost that ever since, last time we saw these guys come into the league, like within like the same time frame was like the Patrick Mahomes, Joe Burrow, Lamar Jackson, Josh Allen. I'm hoping that we get those sorts of rivalries, because those are the next in line. And then these guys will follow them. To me, this can set up to where we have those sort of marquee quarterback matchups that we're circling on our calendar. Like, I want to see that guy go against that guy. Or just like in a head-to-head perspective, because we haven't gotten that from, honestly, 2021 and 2022 and 2023 quarterback classes just have not matched up to that.
No, and I think this could be a fun one too, especially if they're both, you have two historic franchises that have been searching for this guy, and I think that just kind of adds to it. So let's look at the defense for a few minutes. Montez Sweat, old
Yeah.
friend here. How I know what his stats are, only 3 sacks. And it's funny because I know it sounds like there's probably a little bit of like, oh no, that's kind of what he was here. He get them in bunches, and he's in that 9 to 12 range. So what's going on
And
with him?
the thing with Sweat, it's interesting, is that that's something he notices too. It's funny because there was an exchange with, like, when they were beating Jacksonville pretty handedly, Keenan Allen told us that Montez Sweat was like, man, like, you know, I want to get back on the field. I want to go get a sack. You guys keep, extending drives on third down. That's not something that this offense has been able to do that often. They, first part of the season, they were relying so heavily on the defense to keep them in games. And when Montez Sweat is out there, he's getting doubled. He's getting chipped. Like, they're adding so much attention to him. And that's what happens when you have a Pro Bowl talent on one side of the defensive line. That's naturally going to be where the attention shifts. But their sack percentage, they're 8th right now in the NFL through 7 weeks. That's something that just was not the case last year. Now, the numbers aren't astronomical by and large for the whole team, but they're getting pressure on from the interior. Javon Dexter, their 2nd-year 3 technique, has been really, really good for them. Andrew Billings, who was known as a run stuffer throughout his career, has been a big part of the pass rush. And, for Montez Sweat, I think it will eventually come. He's too talented of a player to kind of be, I wouldn't say stuck in a rut by any stretch, but you're right. Like, the way you say, like, pointing it out, like it comes in bunches for him. It's kind of how it rolled last year, once he gets traded to Chicago at the deadline. But this defense, this pass rush was the biggest question going into the season. And it seems like a lot of those things have been quieted down. Now, for a team that was number 1, number 2 against the run last year, that's probably the only area you can truly pick apart with their defense right now. Granted, by and large, this is still a unit that is one of the best top 5 defense that they've been eyeing for all season long. Like, in going back to the preseason, they're meeting that mark early on and showing that they do have that ability.
And then just a couple more things, but the secondary I know is banged up. What's the health status for this weekend? Because that would be a big deal for this game.
They could still be missing some pieces, I think. So Jaquan Brisker, their starting safety, is in the concussion protocol. It's been 2 weeks now. So he got injured, he forced a turnover against Carolina. And on that play where he ends up knocking out the tight end knocks himself out with the helmet-to-helmet contact with Brisker. That's the play that he was injured on. He finishes the game, but then goes into the protocol the next day. He's been out for 2 weeks. 3rd concussion for him in 2 years. I'm sure that the Bears are probably trying to be as smart as they can with this, but it's not just him. It's Tyreek Stevenson dealing with a calf injury. It sounds like he's trending in the right direction. He was back at walkthrough on Monday. Kyler Gordon still has a hamstring injury. So that's the one that I'm looking at on the injury report come Wednesday. What's his status? Did he practice? In what capacity? And if he's not, then the Bears are going to have to rely on the backups that they put in against Jacksonville. And they did admirably. I thought Elijah Hicks in place of Jaquan Brisker played a strong game. Josh Blackwell was tremendous when he had to fill in at the nickel. And even Jalen Jones, like, all 3 of these guys have been in this system for a while. So that gives Matt Eberflus confidence that if he does have to turn it back to them against Washington, it's not going to be like deer in the headlights. I mean, I thought it was kind of interesting. He mentioned yesterday that he felt it was easy for them from, like, just kind of a plug and play standpoint of knowing the fundamentals, knowing the run fits, the pass fits, those things. That's not a word that coaches typically use to describe, like, someone's execution and what your job is. Oh, it was easy for them to do that. Jacksonville's offense is a little different than Washington's offense. So that's going to be, that's going to be a different test. And it's going to be a different test if Jayden Daniels plays going against a quarterback that, is a big part of the run game. And you would like to have your secondary. You'd like to have all pieces of your defense available in the case that happens. But I still feel like they might be missing at least 1 or 2 pieces, just kind of based on where these injuries are early in the week.
But where do you think they're most vulnerable offensively and then also defensively?
Defensively, I still think it's that secondary. I would until we see those guys come off any sort of injury report, or if they're on it, what they're classified as. That's the biggest one. And then offensively, I would say the offensive line. And you could point to it, but like they have really changed their. The pocket's gotten deeper. Caleb has been able to step up and make some pretty big throws from there. And he's looked very comfortable because he's had pass protection, especially on the inside, that just wasn't there the first couple of weeks. They've really gotten the right combination for the players that they have, and they're getting some guys back from injury soon. So I think that will trend upwards. I would say offensively, can you continue the streak that you're on right now by getting your skill involved as much as they are? Keenan Allen, 2 touchdowns, Cole Kmet, 2 touchdowns against Jacksonville. Like, we haven't seen that sort of production where, it's something, even like you go back last year, it felt like the DJ Moore show. And if it wasn't him, then it wasn't anybody. They have to be able to continue this offensive identity, like what they've built, by tapping into those guys on a week-to-week basis. Now, we've seen it for 2 weeks. Can you continue it another week against a better defense than what you saw against Jacksonville? That's going to be the test. And until we see, that happen, I think that, there will be questions about, what is the Chicago Bears team? Is it a team that can beat up on some really bad defenses and grab a couple wins when they need to? Or can they start to, when their schedule gets a little bit harder, really taking it with their offense and scoring, 28, 30 points a game consistently? Like, that's just not something that has been their MO in recent years. And to see them do that in back-to-back weeks is a sign that I think it's going in the right direction.
Man, there are so many similarities because we're watching an offense this year that we haven't seen in a few decades, to be almost actually for a long time. So anyways, hopefully it's a fun game. Hopefully we see both quarterbacks, and I appreciate you coming on, Courtney.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That's it for this episode. Thanks to Courtney for joining me, and thank you, as always, for tuning in. Like I said, I'll be back on Saturday with my 5 things I think, talking about the Bears game and a few other tidbits that I learned throughout the week. I'll talk to you next time.